That song is a.
So we're back again with Screwtape letters. I think we're starting on chapter 12, but we just watched the original official video of Kansas singing "Dust in the Wind," and whenever I hear these songs again from the old days, a lot of times after when we're reading things like this or doing a Bible study, I hear a good song in a completely different way. You know, there's so much in that song that resonates with me, probably with you all. Growing up and listening to it has such an impact. But then when I overlaid it, I was actually listening. It came on the radio when I was reading Screwtape again, and I laid it over on was reading chapter 12, which we're doing tonight, and suddenly there's so much likeness in there into what he's saying. It's kind of what Screwtape's saying. Screwtape is saying to get the guy to contend that nothing matters. It's all dust in the wind, and it's not important enough to be upset about, and it's not important enough to be happy about. It's just kind of a melancholy middle that you float along, knowing that it's just dust in the wind. That's all it is, dust in the wind. And I thought, oh no, I've ruined it. I've ruined the song for myself, but I haven't, because my memory is too strong. But it really does have a strong undercurrent. I think tonight when we read 12, maybe 13 and 14, depending how fast we go, kind of keep dust in the wind floating around the back of your head, and see if you don't see it coming out a little bit in the song. So yeah, 12. Whoops! Oh shoot! I'm just batting 1,000 with this. Every night I do this. I just closed it. That's what I just did. So hang on a minute.
Always thought of that song as kind of religious, as a religious song.
Yeah.
I was liking the dust in the wind to the whole Ash Wednesday. Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Part.
Yes, absolutely.
Probably how they intended when they wrote it, but
no, and I think that's the wonderful thing about doing this kind of study and any studies like this, that you begin to see and hear things that you've heard and seen so many times before, completely different, with a completely new with a completely new way of seeing them or way of understanding them. All right, let me get through this ad. Okay. All right, let's begin.
My dear Wormwood, obviously you are making excellent progress. My only fear is lest in attempting to hurry the patient, you awaken him to a sense of his real position. For you and I, who see that position as it really is, must never forget how totally different it ought to appear to him. We know that we have introduced a change of direction in his course, which is already carrying him out of his orbit around the enemy. But he must be made to imagine that all the choices which have affected this change of course are trivial and revocable. He must not be allowed to suspect that he is now, however slowly, heading right away from the sun on a line which will carry him into the cold and dark of utmost space. For this reason, I am almost glad to hear that he is still a churchgoer and a communicant. I know there are dangers in this, but anything is better than that he should realize the break he has made with the first months of his Christian life. As long as he retains externally the habits of a Christian, he can still be made to think of himself as one who has adopted a few new friends and amusements, but whose spiritual state is much the same as it was 6 weeks ago. And while he thinks that, we do not have to contend with the explicit repentance of a definite, fully recognized sin, but only with his vague, though uneasy feeling that he hasn't been doing very well recently. This dim uneasiness needs careful handling. If it gets too strong, it may wake him up and spoil the whole game. On the other hand, if you suppress it entirely, which, by the by, the enemy will probably not allow you to do, we lose an element in the situation which can be turned to good account. If such a feeling is allowed to live, But not allowed to become irresistible and flower into real repentance, it has one invaluable tendency. It increases the patient's reluctance to think about the enemy. All humans, at nearly all times, have some such reluctance, but when thinking of him involves facing and intensifying a whole vague cloud of half-conscious guilt, this reluctance is increased tenfold. They hate every idea that suggests him, just as men in financial embarrassment hate the very sight of a bank book. In this state, your patient will not omit, but he will increasingly dislike his religious duties. He will think about them as little as he feels he decently can beforehand, and forget them as soon as possible when they're over. A few weeks ago, you had to tempt him to unreality and inattention in his prayers. But now you will find him opening his arms to you and almost begging you to distract his purpose and benumb his heart. He will want his prayers to be unreal, for he will dread nothing so much as effective contact with the enemy. His aim will be to let sleeping worms lie. As this condition becomes more fully established, you will be gradually freed from the tiresome business of providing pleasures as temptations. As the uneasiness and his reluctance to face it cut him off more and more from all real happiness, and as habit renders the pleasures of vanity and excitement and flippancy at once less pleasant and harder to forego, for that is what habit fortunately does to a pleasure, you will find that anything or nothing is sufficient to attract his wandering attention. You no longer need a good book, which he really likes, to keep him from his prayers or his work or his sleep. A column of advertisements in yesterday's paper will do. You can make him waste his time not only in conversation he enjoys with people whom he likes, but also in conversations with those he cares nothing about on subjects that bore him. You can make him do nothing at all for long periods. You can keep him up late at night, not roistering, but staring at a dead fire in a cold room. All the healthy and outgoing activities which we want him to avoid can be inhibited and nothing given in return. So that at last he may say, as one of my own patients said on his arrival down here, "I now see that I spent most of my life in doing neither what I ought nor what I liked." The Christians describe the enemy as one without whom nothing is strong, and nothing is very strong. Strong enough to steal away a man's best years, not in sweet sins, but in a dreary flickering of the mind over it knows not what and knows not why, in the gratification of curiosities so feeble that the man is only half aware of them, in drumming of fingers and kicking of heels, in whistling tunes that he does not like, or in the long, dim labyrinth of reveries that have not even lust or ambition to give them a relish, but which, once chance association has started them, the creature is too weak and fuddled to shake off. You will say, these are very small sins, and doubtless, like all young tempters, you are anxious to be able to report spectacular wickedness. But do remember, the only thing that matters is the extent to which you separate the man from the enemy. It does not matter how small the sins are, provided that their cumulative effect is to edge the man away from the light and out into the nothing. Murder is no better than cards if cards can do the trick. Indeed, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape.
This has got to be one of my favorite chapters or letters in the book, and that last line is got to be one of my favorite lines of all time. And it doesn't Cleese just say it so well? I mean, it's gripping the way he gets to the root of this. Did anything stand out for you when we started? Did something that grab you that you're hanging on in your memory right now, or a theme or a phrase or whatever?
We are excellent at wasting time. I don't, I mean, that's just exactly, and that's probably my biggest guilt of every day, not doing what I'm supposed to be doing and wasting time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of the mantra of our age, isn't it? So much time wasted and off doing the thing you shouldn't do, or nothing. Nothing at all. Well, we started to start then. Let's see. Obviously, we're making excellent progress. Oh,
There's a lot of nothing distractions these days, your phone and social media scrolling and the TV. And I mean, some of that's entertainment, I suppose, and okay every now and then, but there's so much available.
I was talking to a contractor the other day, and he does a lot of his own work. Doesn't have to, but he does. And he says one of the reasons that he does it is because it's the only time during the day when he's not distracted. He takes his phone off and leaves it in his truck. He puts on his belt like he used to, and he just works. And he says there's no other time during the day where that happens. I'm tied to my phone because I want to be. I carry it around. I use it all the time. I get in the car. I turn on the radio. I'm just fill my life with distractible moments. And I realized a few years ago that I can't. I'm really missing something. And I went on a job and did some of the work myself and realized that's what I was missing. I was missing just being focused and not being distracted. So I thought that was brilliant. He's a really good guy. All right, let's see. So, Catherine, before we started, we played Kansas Dust in the Wind. And I said it has a likeness to this chapter. So I don't want to ruin the song for everybody, but you'll see now how it starts to fit, right? So let's just take it from the top. So we've got, so he's obviously complimenting Wormwood, saying you're doing excellent progress, but warns him not to hurry the patient along, that he's got all the time in the world, right? He has time to make this work. He has time to discourage and to break and to debilitate the spirit of his patient. And he puts a point on this by saying, for you and I, who see the position really is, must never forget how totally different it appears to them, that there is a clarity for the demon that we don't have. We're at the disadvantage. We spend our time wondering why we're feeling melancholy or listless or bored or upset. Can't figure out why we can't get interested in anything. But Screwtape and Wormwood have a clear vision and understanding why, because they're working on us to fracture our attention and spread our mind and our efforts over such a wide breadth of things that we just can't do anything. It's like having that getting ready for a party or a family to come, and you have a list of 25 things to do, and all of us have gotten 25 things done before family comes, but I know that feeling when you get the list, when you're about to start and you look at the list and you just stop, like, holy crud, I can't do this.
Never get done in time.
Yeah, it just like, and then you pick and you start. But imagine if you could freeze that moment where you've gone to all the trouble to make the list, and now you hold it up and look at it and you say, this is impossible. I can't do this. Freeze. Now, what would you do next? You throw it down and go watch TV. Or, in the old days, if you have a drink, you do anything, but you can't do this. It's just overwhelming. Can't get it done.
You would do literally anything else.
Anything else. Yep. All right. So he says, introduce a change in his direction. This whole first section here, paragraph and the second paragraph, him moving into saying he's glad he's still in church, but that starts with this line: he must not be allowed to suspect that he is now, however slowly, heading right away from the sun, and right away from the sun on the line to carry him out into the cold dark of the uttermost space. So he's got the sun. He's looking at not only I'm losing all my words tonight. It's not only the lightness of the heat, right? The warmth, the pleasure, the light, everything about the sun that's good, that you'd want to be around, want to be with. That, but it's also the comfort that with the light and everything about it, you're safe. Everything's fine. And he's saying that he's getting him to the place where he doesn't even recognize this. That the very thing that should be keeping him and attracting him and making him feel good is wasting away. It shouldn't be possible, should it? It shouldn't be. Somehow we're overriding what is the natural way to be with the unnatural way to be. Afraid in the dark when we've got the sun right there. Moving away when we think we're staying still. Now it says, and then this horrible commentary, or perhaps this very accurate commentary of the church. I'm very glad to hear that he's still a churchgoer and a communicant. I know there are dangers of this, but anything is better than he should realize the break that he has made with the months of his Christian life. As long as he retains externally the habits of a Christian, he can still be made to think of himself as one who has adopted new friends and amusement, but whose spiritual state is much the same as it was 6 weeks ago. And he thinks that we do not have to contend with the explicit repentance of definite, fully recognized sin, but only with a vague, though uneasy feeling that he hasn't been doing it very well lately. This whole idea that Lewis is putting forward, obviously this is a church experience that Lewis has had. I think we've all had this experience. I have had so many experiences with people that are going just through the paces. They're doing it out of habit, or they're brought up that way, or I don't know, something else to do on Sunday morning. I don't know, but their process is just one-dimensional. There's not even a spiritual depth and longing. We can have a lesser book knowledge or academic knowledge or theological knowledge of what's going on, but if we have the faith expression of it, if we're being called and we know it, and there's a comfort in it, and we know it, it's part of us and we know it, that's not this. This is just something else altogether. This is putting on a suit and pretending, but not realizing that's what you're doing. So we're working this poor man into this place where that's the way he would live his life. So he goes to church with that. No big deal. There's no danger at all that he's going to be lost. So let's see, dim uneasiness. It goes on to guilt. Oh, so he does this likeness of the banker who has gotten into financial difficulty, and is saying that he begins to really even hate having to look at his checkbook or having to do with bank matters, because he knows that when he looks at it, it's going to be devastating. And he doesn't want to remember how he got himself into that place. So rather than look at that place and try to overcome it, to get back the money, to fix his life, the way they want him to do it is the ostrich, right? The head in the sand. Don't look, don't see, nothing. And as long as I don't see it, it's not real. I'm fine. I'm doing fine. I knew a man years ago, probably 35, 40 years ago now, who great suits, wore a nice hat, came to church on Sunday, see him out in town. Didn't know for a long time that he, who was very rich, he lived down a road with big houses and, old money, had spent all his money. He was nearly broke. And he was recycling these old suits and, playing the part of the man that he was before he squandered all his money. But it was all an act. It wasn't a real thing at all. And in fact, when it came out that it was happening, I remember people around the area were just so devastated. They were so sad for him that he thought he had to play this part all these years and put up this front, because it separated him from the reality of who he was with the people. But I don't think that he did play a part. I think that's really who he kept thinking he was. It was just a false him. That's all. When the news came out that that's the way he was, he didn't change anything. He wasn't like, okay, well, finally I can take this off and be just me now. He didn't do that. He's like, oh, don't worry about that. And he stayed exactly the same. And the weeds grew up around the house, and windows got broken and the driveway got big cracks in it and holes, but he just kept living like he was on top of the world. Vague cloud of half-conscious guilt, reluctance, the very idea suggests. So he had this this observance. The very idea that he was broke or that he'd squandered his money was so objectionable to him that he couldn't live it. He couldn't go there. He couldn't have that a part of his life. He had to keep creating the facade and living the facade, really living it, that he had the money. He could not look at it. He could not deal with it. And as far as I know, I was the Marine Corps and I went away and I think he died while I was gone. I don't think he ever changed. I think he lived the end of his life that way. Kind of like a movie, living something that you're not. Okay, he goes on to say, a few weeks ago you had to tempt him to the unreality and inattention of his prayers, but now you will find him opening his arms to you and almost begging you to distract his purpose and benumb his heart. He will want his prayers to be unreal, for he will dread nothing so much as effective contact with the enemy. So what Screwtape is saying is that inside of this guy, he knows he's fallen away. He knows that his relationship is broken. He knows that he's not quite believing anymore, but he doesn't want to go there. He doesn't want to have that put in his face, because if it's put in his face, he has to choose. He has to decide, am I going to double down, go back, try to find my feet here, find my grounding, renew my faith, renew my process, give God another chance, or am I going to keep living this life and not deal with it? And he's choosing to just live the life and not deal with it. So he's saying he certainly doesn't want to pray and have God answer his prayers. Because if God answers his prayers, it'll be forced on him that he has to take it back up again. He has to look at it. He has to make a decision because, well, hello, there's God. So he's saying he doesn't want actually to have contact with God, because the only option when you have contact with God is to deal with God. And he doesn't want to do it. It goes on to this wonderful, this is a great tirade. Your kitchen becomes more fully established. You gradually be freed from the tiresome business of providing pleasures as temptations, as the uneasiness of a reluctance to face it cuts him off more and more from all real happiness. And as the habit renders the pleasure of vanity and excitement and flippancy at once less pleasant and harder to forego, you will find that anything or nothing is sufficient to attract his wandering attention. So this is that idea that says, let me use alcoholic for an example. I like to have a drink. So I come home at night. Why do I like to have a drink? I'm talking about some people, right? So I come home at night and I have a low ball of Jack Daniels. And I get a little rush, I feel a little happy. It's okay, it's great. But after 2 weeks of doing that, a little low ball doesn't do it anymore. So now I take 2 low balls and I get the little rush. And you know where I'm going. Pretty much in a month now, I start drinking before I even get home. I take my first 3 shots before I get in the car, because I don't want my family and my wife to know that I'm drinking, a half a bottle a night. So I keep another bottle in my work so I can start on it before I get home, and I'm drinking less. They won't see it. So the problem is we build up a tolerance to it, and you have to drink more and more and more, take more. Well, Screwtape is saying this is the way it is with all the pleasures. If we get addicted to the pleasure, then the pleasure is diminished by the addiction. We get immune to it. We get desensitized by it. So we have to keep upping the ante. So the pleasure no longer becomes pleasurable, because it's not something we fall into. It's something we have to work at. I have to work at making it more intense. I have to work at making it more energetic. I have to work at making it more possible. And it becomes an action that must be managed. So he's saying this always happens. And I think he's right. I've had this experience in my own life. I think we get to a point when this happens that then we just give it up. You ever talk to somebody who you've seen them, when you saw them, they were really excited about something they were doing? I've taken up mountain climbing. And for a year, they're like, oh, they buy all the pants, they get pictures on Facebook, and they've got all this stuff. And then you see him again the next year later, and they're like, I don't want to do it anymore. Yeah. I got burned out on it. I don't do it. They reached a point where for them to get the same rush or the same experience with their mountain climbing, it took 3 days of preparation, and 2 days just to get to the place where you're going to hike. And then it just became a huge thing. And they couldn't sustain it, so they gave it up. This is all what Screwtape is saying. Get him to be at that place, because the thing that should sustain him is going to be the thing that drives him down. It's flipped on its head.
Bill,
Okay.
could that be something like we were talking about George Santos? He just keeps building up in his own mind or whatever.
Yeah.
Now he can't stop.
Yeah, he can't stop.
Yeah.
He's just an habitual liar. He's got to keep making himself bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And more important, I was shocked when it came out that he said his grandmother was a prisoner at Auschwitz during the war, and that he said he has Jewish heritage, and that she was this. It's a big deal if you had a family member that was in that prison camp. He didn't. It's a complete fiction. He's not Jewish. He had a grandmother in Auschwitz. But it made him more important. Suddenly he was important among the Jewish community, and they were looking up to him as a family member, a legacy. So yeah, I think it just spewed from him. It's uncontrollable, where he just has to be more and more and more and bigger and bigger. And he's gotten into Congress, and he's still doing it.
Yeah.
So he's just chasing this bar that keeps getting moved with every time he does it. And I'm very happy because he's gotten caught, and it's just piled up, and it's all coming up because he did not do anything to hide it. I mean, who would say something like that?
Yeah.
My grandmother was a prisoner at Auschwitz, and you just look up his family history, and it's not there. It's a sad reality of a person's life that he does this, and it just doesn't seem to bother him. Just who he is.
Well, not only that, but the people who were behind him, putting him up for nomination and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, they can usually do everything and know when we were potty trained,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what happened there?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all very weird.
Yeah.
him. Okay, so it says no longer need a good book. I love this. No longer need a good book, which he really likes, to keep him from his prayers or his work. A column of yesterday's paper will make him waste his time not only in conversation he enjoys with people he likes, but conversations with people he doesn't know and doesn't care about. Anything as a distraction from what he should be doing. And we all know that. We do that. We got something we have to do. We got to go in and clean the closet. We got to go mop the floor. We got to go outside and take care of something. And on the way out the door, we see the plant needs watering. And so we go in the kitchen, can't find the little, should be under the sink. It's not there. So we get a glass out of the cabinet, and we fill that up, and we go and we put it down. We do the plant, and we go back to the sink and realize, oh, I'm thirsty, because now I got a glass in my hand. So I get myself something to drink. And when I get myself something to drink, I realize there's the paper. I sit down at the table, and now whatever I was going to do is long gone. It's just long gone. This sequence of events, and I haven't done anything. I'm nowhere closer. In fact, I'm farther away.
I like him say even a column of ads.
Yeah.
Column of advertisement in yesterday's paper will do.
Yeah.
That's just pitiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's true, but it is pitiful.
Yes. All right, we have this next page is one of my favorites. And it starts with all the healthy and outgoing activities which we want him to avoid can be inhibited, and nothing, this begins this word, nothing given in return. So that at last he may say, as one of my own patients have said down here, I now see that I spent most of my life in doing neither what I ought nor what I liked. And then he begins this explanation. So he says, the Christians describe the enemy as one without whom nothing is strong. So where is that? Where do the Christians describe the enemy as one who with nothing is not strong? Well, I'm going to read you where that is. Hang on a second, let me get this up. Are you ready?
Yeah.
O God, the protector of all who trust in you, without whom nothing is strong, nothing is holy. Increase and multiply upon us your mercy, that with you as our ruler and guide, we may so pass through things temporal, that we lose not the things eternal. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the collect for the 27th of July. So this is a collect in the church. This is an Episcopal collect. This is an Anglican collect. So he's quoting this right out of the prayer book. Without nothing, with whom nothing is strong. So in the prayer book, it's a double entendre is what's happening here. In the prayer book, let's see, it says, "O God, the protector of all who trust in you." Got this set up. You're protecting those who trust in you. Right? This is, I love parsing the collect sometimes. The collect is not saying, "Oh God, you're the protector of all people." Right? It's saying you're the protector of all who trust in you, because the people who don't know you can't accept your protection, right? Okay, it goes on. Without whom, that's God, without you, nothing is strong, nothing is holy. So nothing aside from God is strong or holy, right? Got it. But Screwtape, it turns it around. He flips it on his head in a brilliant way. He says, okay. The Christians describe the enemy as one without whom nothing is strong. And nothing is very strong. So now he's not saying nothing is strong without God. He's saying nothing is very strong. So he's flipped it sideways. Is strong enough to steal away a man's best years and sweet sins by the dreary flickering of a mind over it, of the mind over it knows that, and not knows why. The gratification of curiosity is so feeble the man is only half aware of them. The drumming of fingers, the kicking of heels, the whistling of tunes that he does not like, or the long dim labyrinth of revelries do not even lust or ambition to give them a relish, but which, once chance association has started them, the creature is too weak and befuddled to shake them off. This is the beginning of the nothing. This is the nothing. He's saying nothing is really strong. Not that nothing is strong without God. You know, this is the nothing of hell, the nothing of negation, of the taking away. That this is where he wants the man to go. It's the nothing. It says, "You will say the very small sin," down at the bottom. It does not matter how small the sins are, provided the cumulative effect is to edge the man away from the light and into the nothing. So the nothing is the bucket of everything we've said so far. The nothing is this place where he doesn't get anything done. It's a nothing life. It's a nothing direction. It's dust in the wind. It's everything is just melancholy, and I have no control, and it's going to be that way no matter what. And let's just not talk about it. You ever have a discussion with somebody who's really important to you about some topic that's really important, and somewhere in the middle of it they say, let's just not talk about it. Or even better, let's not talk about it now.
Yeah.
And you know what that means. They'll never talk about it. They're never going to talk about it. It's just, I can't deal with it. I can't deal with it. There's nothing I can do about it anyway. What good is it going to do to talk about it? You know, this is the nothing that Screwtape is talking about. Once we go to this place of melancholy, this place of nothing, we're certainly not relying on God. This is the nothing that exists without the dependence on God, without the thoughts of God, without the honesty or the reflection with God. It's just the nothing. There's nothing there. And then he does this last little bit we spoke about. Murder is no better than cards if cards do the trick. I don't think people think about that very often. We think that, you know, people who do really bad sins, you know, somebody's in the newspaper that cheated on their wife or husband, or stole or embezzled, and we're like, oh, this is terrible. But then, you know, you don't think about the guy next door down the street, or maybe, you know, some of the things we've done. That the difference is we've done it just a little bit, you know, a little here, a little there, a little here, a little there. It's not big enough to catch anybody's attention. It's just a little tiny thing. This person did a real big one and got caught. But in the biblical expression or the understanding of sin, these two things are no different. They are exactly the same. You know, there's no such thing as a little sin. That's why I've said in a sermon before, and if you've heard me say this, I said, if I tell you, if you're going to come over to my house and I say, go down to the corner and turn right. Okay. So you go down to the corner and you go straight. Okay. Or you go to the corner and you turn left. Or you go to the corner and you turn around. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you did. Turn around or you sit there. You just turn off the car and sit at the stop at the crossroads. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is you're not doing what you were supposed to do, which is turn right. All the rest of them are equal. Doesn't matter which one. Anywhere you go, you're not going to get to my house unless you turn right. So there's no little sin and a big sin. God says, don't do it. And you and I do it this much. And this other person does it this much. The size doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you're not supposed to do it and we did it. And he's not supposed to do it and he did it. So then don't get caught up in this too much, because then you have compounded sin, right? He's doing it because he is now planned for it and made it happen. He's reveling in it. He's enjoying it and blah, blah, blah. So he's got other sins piled up on top of it. We just have this single sin, right? We did it, but it was small. There's no such thing as small. You know, that's what we tell ourselves because we want to be exempt, but that's the way that it is. So he says that's what he's saying here. Indeed, the safest road to hell is a gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. Just keep going the way you're going and make excuses for what you're doing and don't think about it. That's exactly what he's saying.
And you'll never know the difference.
Yeah. You'll just, one day you're there. That's it. That's brilliant. It's just absolutely brilliant. And I know, and you know, somewhere along the way, people that are like this, they have so gently moved into a manner of life or a way of being that they can no longer see they're in it. They can no longer see the things that they're doing or the things that they're saying are hurtful or problematic, because that's just where they live. And you know, it's for me, it's been very distressing because I've seen some old friends of mine do this, and I don't think there's no redeeming them. They're gonna have to find their way out of it, and I don't think they can. They've just been living this downward, yeah, very gentle.
No turns, no signposts.
Nope. All kind of pleasurable, you know, soft
I'm
under.
gonna say, hey, you're going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Nothing like that.
Yeah, what a great chapter. Letter 12. So wonderful. Do you want to stick more with that, or you want to head on to 13? Okay.
guess.
We got time.
Oh, yes. 16
Yeah.
minutes. Should be all right. Let's see. Share screen. There we go. There. Whoop. What happened? Come back.
What do you love most about Whitney?
I'm Abby Maxman, President and CEO of Oxfam America.
Abby?
I know it feels like the world.
Letter 13. My dear Wormwood, it seems to me that you take a great many pages to tell a very simple story. The long and the short of it is that you have let the man slip through your fingers. The situation is very grave, and I really see no reason why I should try to shield you from the consequences of your inefficiency. A repentance and renewal of what the other side call grace on the scale which you describe is a defeat of the first order. It amounts to a second conversion, and probably on a deeper level than the first. As you ought to have known, the asphyxiating cloud which prevented your attacking the patient on his walk back from the old mill is a well-known phenomenon. It is the enemy's most barbarous weapon, and generally appears when he is directly present to the patient under certain modes not yet fully classified. Some humans are permanently surrounded by it, and therefore inaccessible to us. And now for your blunders. On your own showing, you first of all allowed the patient to read a book he really enjoyed because he enjoyed it, and not in order to make clever remarks about it to his new friends. In the second place, you allowed him to walk down to the old mill and have tea there, a walk through country he really likes, and taken alone. In other words, you allowed him 2 real positive pleasures. Were you so ignorant as not to see the danger of this? The characteristic of pains and pleasures is that they are unmistakably real, and therefore, as far as they go, give the man who feels them a touchstone of reality. Thus, if you had been trying to damn your man by the romantic method, by making him a kind of child Harold or Werther, submerged in self-pity for imaginary distresses, you would try to protect him at all costs from any real pain. Because, of course, 5 minutes genuine toothache would reveal the romantic sorrows for the nonsense they were and unmask your whole stratagem. But you were trying to damn your patient by the world, that is, by palming off vanity, bustle, irony, and expensive tedium as pleasures. How can you have failed to see that a real pleasure was the last thing you ought to have let him meet? Didn't you foresee that it would just kill, by contrast, all the trumpery which you have been so laboriously teaching him to value? And that the sort of pleasure which the book and the walk gave him was the most dangerous of all? That it would peel off from his sensibility the kind of crust you have been forming on it, and make him feel that he was coming home, recovering himself. As a preliminary to detaching him from the enemy, you wanted to detach him from himself, and had made some progress in doing so. Now all that is undone. Of course, I know that the enemy also wants to detach men from themselves, but in a different way. Remember always that he really likes the little vermin and sets an absurd value on the distinctness of every one of them. When he talks of their losing their selves, he means only abandoning the clamour of self-will. Once they have done that, he really gives them back all their personality and boasts, I'm afraid, sincerely, that when they are wholly his, they will be more themselves than ever. Hence, while he is delighted to see them sacrificing even their innocent wills to his, he hates to see them drifting away from their own nature for any other reason, and we should always encourage them to do so. The deepest likings and impulses of any man are the raw material, the starting point with which the enemy has furnished him. To get him away from those is therefore always a point gained. Even in things indifferent, it is always desirable to substitute the standards of the world or convention or fashion for a human's own real likings and dislikings. I myself would carry this very far. I would make it a rule to eradicate from my patient any strong personal taste which is not actually a sin, even if it is something quite trivial, such as a fondness for cricket, or collecting stamps, or drinking cocoa. Such things, I grant you, have nothing of virtue in them, but there is a sort of innocence and humility and self-forgetfulness about them which I distrust. The man who truly and disinterestedly enjoys any one thing in the world for its own sake, and without caring twopence what other people say about it, is by that very fact forearmed against some of our subtlest modes of attack. You should always try to make the patient abandon the people or food or books he really likes in favor of the best people, the right food, the important books. I have known a human defended from strong temptation to social ambition by a still stronger taste for tripe and onions. It remains to consider how we can retrieve this disaster. The great thing is to prevent his doing anything. As long as he does not convert it into action, it does not matter how much he thinks about this new repentance. Let the little brute wallow in it. Let him, if he has any bent that way, write a book about it. That is often an excellent way of sterilizing the seeds which the enemy plants in a human soul. Let him do anything but act. No amount of piety in his imagination and affections will harm us if we can keep it out of his will. As one of the humans has said, active habits are strengthened by repetition, but passive ones are weakened. The more often he feels without acting, the less he will be able ever to act, and in the long run, the less he will be able to feel. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Any place stand out for you?
Mm.
So we have this second conversion taking place. So the mill and the walk and the tea. And we all got to understand what Scrooty's saying is that once we get away from ourselves, from the buildup of what we think other people think is important, and we just do something that we like to do, something that's just fun for us, it can, if we live it enough, wash away this other stuff. In fact, you've probably done that, stood on Skyline Drive or something, look out over some vista and think about how beautiful it is and how you feel good. And then maybe as you drive away later on, you're thinking about something back in the world, back in your life. You're saying, why do I do that? Why do I care about that? The seeing this thing that's so beautiful now has cleared something away. And you begin to question your priorities back in the world, back when you're going home, back where it was. I think it's a very normal thing that God provides us this clearing process that goes on. If with a pleasure for ourselves, a real thing, or with seeing something like the Grand Canyon or the vista or a tree or something. I think you can have this in the fall around here. You go outside, and how many I've talked to so many people in the fall that haven't noticed the trees.
How can they not?
Yeah.
I think they go out of their house and they're carrying their stuff and they're looking at the ground, and they get in their car and they drive and they look at the cars and they get to their office and they go in the office, and then they come home and they're tired and they go in their house.
I feel so bad for those people.
They don't stop and just look. Wow. Look at that.
I'm in Lynchburg sometimes, like in the fall, and realize I haven't looked at the trees, like halfway there. I'm not paying attention to the colors. What am I, I've got to pay attention because they won't be here next week. Or next time I come, it'll be brown.
Now, don't answer this question, but when was the last time you just looked at the sky? I mean, gone outside and looked at the blue sky with the clouds and just, stared at it. If it has been a while, you should do it, because if it's been a while, then doing it again, it seems kind of like the first time.
I love life. I look at the clouds every day. I love looking at the
I do
clouds.
it every single day. Yeah.
Yeah. So many,
I always say, well, thank you, God, for those clouds. Thank you, God, for that sky. I mean, it just is.
Or if you see an absolutely beautiful sunset, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I
Yeah.
watch a YouTube channel where a woman says, she looks at that, she says, I see you, God. I see you over there.
yeah.
I like that.
Absolutely. And love the God's fingers, when you see the sunshine shining through the cloud, that's the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those themes.
The beams, yeah. There was a guy in Kilmarnock. He was a member of the parish there, and big time boater, big time fishing. He fished. He's sport fisherman, so he throws them back. I think he brought home some to eat, but went on all the time. It was his reason for not coming to church, because Sunday mornings at 6 a.m. is the best time to fish. And of course, he went out into the bay 15 miles, so he couldn't possibly get back. Well, I'm going to go over to his house and see him midweek and just see how he's doing and talk to him. A number of times when so I was out on Sunday morning, I did this as I was in church, and I said to him, wow, did you see the sunrise? When I came out, I looked at the sunrise, because it's over the water. I'm like, holy smokes, it was beautiful. He said, no. Was it? I'm like, you were on the water. How could you miss the sunrise? Just fishing.
Mhm.
Fishing, I'm paying attention to the fish. I'm fishing. Like, oh man, I can't fathom that, to be in an open space like that and not look at the sky. But he didn't do it. Just, I think you'd have to fight it not to do it. I think there's an underlying reason why he didn't do it. Bigger reason. All right.
I
let's-
like asphyxiating cloud.
the what?
Asphyxiating cloud. Is
Yep,
that,
good job.
I mean, I guess that's God surrounding, or
Yeah.
his being in touch with God, which prevents the demon from getting in.
Yeah.
The well-known phenomenon.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well used by Screwtape and his ilk. Let's see what time it is. Oh, 28. So we may have to split this up. I don't know if we're going to be able, we can't possibly get it done. We should probably not done it, but let's see. So this next thing he says, in the second place, this is the next paragraph. Kim, losing that word. In the second place, you allowed him to walk down the old mill, T, blah, blah, blah. You real two pleasures, okay. Characteristic pains and pleasures are unmistakably real. And this, he talks about the toothache. And then he goes into this thing about the Child Herald and Werther. That Child Herald was a poem, multiple verse poem that was put out in sections by Lord Byron in the 1800s. And this is a young knight. He's a young man. He's a noble knight, and there's no war, but he's a knight, so he spends his time at parties and honorably, with the upper class, and wearing his uniform and his stuff, and being told that he's wonderful and he's great because he's a noble knight. And so all of that begins to lose. He just begins to be, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not happy with it. It was one time, and we were saying earlier, at one time it was so wonderful. He couldn't wait to get there, do all these parties. Now he's been doing it for several years. And it's like, oh gosh, I can't do another one of these things. You just go stand around and chat, and oh my gosh, can't do it. So he leaves and goes around the world, all these other countries, looking for adventures. And he goes alone with his entourage. He doesn't take any friends to do the adventures. And as he goes around and does the adventures, he begins to see that every place is like every other place. It's all the same. So the melancholy that he had moved into when he was going to the parties, he's now moved into as he travels around the world. So it's just the nothing. It's the nothing. There's melancholia. And then Werther is the same thing. That is, let's see, who was that? Oh gosh, Werther was. I can't remember. Lost it. I was just thinking. I've known it for so long. It's not, the other one's Lord Byron. Werther, Submersive Pity. It's another story. Can't remember what the story is though. It's another story of the same kind, where there's a movement from the reality of life as an exciting thing into this melancholy, this drift to nothing. That's why he says, submerged in self-pity for imaginary distresses, you would try to protect him at all costs from any real pain, because in the course of 5 minutes. So both of these guys, Werther and what?
Because it's an opera.
Yeah, okay.
Opera in 4 acts.
I keep forgetting we have computers now. We can just look this stuff up.
A novel about a young man who finds himself caught in a love triangle because he listens to his emotions over his more reasonable common sense side. His inability to let go of the woman that he loves leads him to suicide.
Oh, I didn't remember that part. So this is the overwhelmingness. He's got the reality of what he can have has become so distressfully impossible that it's an unreality that he can't live with. And what's the point? There's no point to it. I might as well just be dead. So that's what he does. I was just talking to someone today about suicide, young lady at the school. And this is one of the things she said. She said, I don't understand why my friends get to the place where they think that breaking up with a boyfriend or getting a bad grade in school is everything. And if they don't get the grade, or if they don't get the boyfriend, then there's no point. It's all worthless. It's all, oh, here I go again, dust in the wind. It's just nothing. There's no point to it. And they kill themselves. She said, I don't understand it. So I think it's been going on forever. Here we are, Screwtape talking about it from the 1930s. So that's back then, it predates that even. It is a warped perception. It's really, things are out of perspective. Something that should not be important becomes so important that it takes over everything else and can just wipe you out, debilitate the person to the point where, at least we're talking today about people committing suicide because they just can't deal with this horrible thing. They got to be. I understand there's a lot of other pressures with that, right? It's not just a be, it's the pressures of the family, letting people down, not living up to expectations and like that. But still, when you stack up, I'm not living up to the expectations of somebody else with, I will never get any older and have a family and have children and do a better job. They don't match. These two things don't match. It's so out of whack. So this is what Screwtape is trying to get him to do. Get this man so out of whack that he cannot discern what is important from what's not important. And he gets to a place where nothing's important. It's all just mushed together. And that's where we'll have to stop and pick up next week with the mush in the middle of chapter 13. I'm losing my voice, can you tell?
Yeah.
I like the cat in the background too, though.
Oh.
So
Well,
cute.
Wind up talking all day long. Oh, the little tree?
Yeah.
No, the cat,
Oh, where's the cat?
right behind you, other shoulder.
Oh, he snuck up there. I didn't even see her do it.
Beautiful creature.
Yeah, we went away for Thanksgiving, went to the beach. And my last hurrah. And she sleeps on me every night. She goes to sleep right here. I lay on my back and she'll come up. I have to get my arm out and pet her. My arm's freezing, it's cold. And I'm trying to like this. A lot of times I'll go to sleep and I'll wake up because my arm is so cold, to put on the thing. When we got home after 4 days of not being here, she beat me to death. She would wait for me to walk by and hit my leg, chase me through the room and hit me over and over again. She even jumped up on the, because I was walking back and forth in the dining room carrying things, and she jumped on the dining room table and hit me when I walked by.
Leave her anymore.
Yeah, she's really temperamental. She's so sweet. All right. Well, you guys have a wonderful night. I really enjoy this time we spend together. This is terrific.
All right.
All right. See y'all later.
God
Have
bless
a
you.
great week, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Mom.